What if I told you that this single judgment, one of the most definitive in all of Star Wars, had almost nothing to do with Luke Skywalker at all? When Luke arrives on Dagobah, desperate to become a Jedi, Yoda dismisses him almost instantly. On the surface, the reasons seem obvious. Luke is reckless, impatient, and his mind is never on the here and now. But the truth is far more complex. Yoda's refusal wasn't about Luke's flaws, it was about Yoda's own crippling failure. When Yoda looked at Luke Skywalker, he didn't just see a farm boy hungry for adventure. He saw a ghost. This wasn't caution. It was trauma. And by the end of this, you'll understand how it reveals a truth, not just about Yoda, but about the catastrophic failure of the entire Jedi Order. To understand Yoda's terror, we have to look past Luke's heroic introduction and see him through Yoda's 900-year-old eyes. For over 2 decades, roughly 22 years to be more precise, Yoda had been in exile, meditating on one catastrophic failure, the fall of Anakin Skywalker and the Jedi Order. And now, standing before him, is another Skywalker, a young man who, from Yoda's perspective, is a psychological echo of the man who became Darth Vader. Think about Luke's defining characteristics at this point. He is impatient, desperate for adventure and excitement. Yoda explicitly calls him out on this, stating, "Adventure, excitement. A Jedi craves not these things." This isn't just a critique, it's a direct echo of Anakin, who chafed under the Jedi Council's authority, always believing he knew better. Then there's the anger. Luke arrives on Dagobah carrying the grief and simmering anger from the deaths of his family and his mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. This anger is palpable, and Yoda senses it immediately. He warns Luke that this path, fear leading to anger, anger to hate, is the path to the dark side. Yoda had heard this song before. He had seen firsthand how Anakin's fear of loss, first for his mother and then for Padme, festered into an uncontrollable rage that Palpatine masterfully exploited. Luke, just like his father, was driven by powerful emotional attachments and a fear of losing those he loved. When he has visions of his friends suffering, his immediate emotional reaction is to abandon his training and rush headlong into a trap, the exact kind of reckless, attachment-fueled decision that defined Anakin's downfall. For Yoda, this was a checklist of red flags. He saw the same hunger for shortcuts, the same belief in his own innate power, and the same emotional volatility that he had failed to contain in the father. The last time a Skywalker this powerful and this reckless was trained, the Jedi Temple burned. In Yoda's mind, agreeing to train Luke felt like making the same mistake twice. Yoda's refusal was as much about his past as it was about Luke's future. His exile on Dagobah wasn't a peaceful retirement. It was a self-imposed penance and a strategic retreat to preserve Jedi knowledge. For 22 years, he had nothing but time to meditate on his mistakes. He was the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, yet he stood by as the Sith rose from the shadows, manipulated a galactic war, and turned their chosen one into a monster. But here's what's crucial. There's a strong argument that Yoda and the Jedi Council had become arrogant, more focused on the dogma of their code than the living force itself. Their strict ban on emotional attachments created a rigid system incapable of helping a Jedi like Anakin. When Anakin came to Yoda for guidance about his premonitions of Padme's death, Yoda's advice was, train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. For a man as deeply attached as Anakin, this was not just unhelpful, it was arguably alienating, pushing him further from the Jedi and closer to Palpatine, who offered a solution. Yoda's guilt extends even to his own apprentices. His last direct Padawan before the events of the Clone Wars was Count Dooku, who also fell to the dark side and became a Sith Lord. First, Dooku. Then Anakin, the apprentice of his former student. From Yoda's perspective, his legacy was one of profound failure. Training Luke meant confronting that legacy head-on, and a mistake could cement the Sith's rule forever. But Yoda's reluctance wasn't just rooted in fear. He had a different plan. And here's where it gets fascinating. When Obi-Wan's Force Ghost appears, insisting it's time to train the galaxy's last hope, Yoda's mind doesn't go to Luke. He thinks of Leia. As revealed in the Canon book from a certain point of view, Yoda had been watching both of Anakin's children, and he had already made his choice. In the short story, There Is Another, Yoda is dismayed when Obi-Wan suggests training the boy, Luke, whom he sees as impetuous, headstrong, unruly, inattentive. Leia, on the other hand, he saw as possessing the strength and will and clarity that showed all the markings of a great Jedi. While Luke was a farm boy dreaming of adventure, Leia was a hardened leader of the rebellion, a senator who had faced down Vader and Tarkin and watched her world be destroyed without breaking. She possessed the discipline and maturity that Luke profoundly lacked. When Obi-Wan insists on training Luke, Yoda bluntly states, "The other Skywalker I would train." This is a stunning revelation. Yoda's plan was to train Leia. He saw her as the safer, more reliable bet. This disagreement highlights the central conflict: Yoda's cautious approach, born from failure, versus Obi-Wan's more hopeful vision. To Yoda, Luke wasn't the only hope. He wasn't even the best hope. Seen through this lens, Yoda's entire interaction with Luke transforms. His initial act as a goofy, eccentric swamp creature isn't just a disguise. It's widely interpreted as the first test, a test of patience, and Luke fails spectacularly, showing irritation and dismissiveness until he learns the creature's true identity. This is the key. Yoda's refusal wasn't a final decision. It was a tactical one. By aggressively rejecting him, Yoda was forcing Luke to confront the gravity of what he was asking. Every impatient outburst only served as further proof for Yoda that his fears were justified. This test reaches its climax when Luke decides to leave Dagobah to save his friends. Yoda and Obi-Wan both plead with him, telling him he is walking into a trap and is not ready to face Vader. But Luke, driven by attachment, leaves anyway. In Yoda's eyes, this was the ultimate confirmation of his fears. The boy was simply too much like his father, choosing personal attachments over the completion of his training, the very same choice that sealed Anakin's fate. If you find these deep dives into the psychology and lore of Star Wars as fascinating as I do, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're always exploring the hidden layers of the galaxy far, far away. In the end, Yoda agrees to train Luke, but only after Obi-Wan's persistent plea. Yet, Yoda's final lesson comes after Luke's failure at Bespin. When Luke returns in Return of the Jedi, he is patient, measured, and in control. Yoda tells him his training is complete. All that remains is to confront Vader. But here is the moment that changes everything. Luke succeeds in a way Yoda and Obi-Wan never thought possible. He doesn't destroy his father, he redeems him. He proves that his attachments, the very thing Yoda feared would lead him to the dark side, were actually his greatest strength. Yoda's initial refusal wasn't just the grumbling of a cranky old master. It was the hesitation of a broken man, terrified of repeating his greatest mistake. But in taking that one last gamble on a Skywalker, Yoda allowed for the birth of a new kind of Jedi, one who could rise above the flawed teachings of the old order and prove that love, not detachment, was the ultimate path to balancing the Force.